Hi, this is John Wood again, and I'm coming to you once more from East Rosebud Fly and Tackle in Billings, Montana. In this video, I'm going to tie for you a classic steelhead fly known as the greenbutt skunk. And I don't do a lot of steelhead fishing. In fact, I've done very little, but I was enamored with these steelhead flies a few years ago and started tying these things and catching brown trout on them. And in the last 10 years, I have yet to hit a stream that has brown trout where they won't eat this thing. Everywhere I've thrown it, when the fish get picky and they won't eat big streamers, throw one of these things on there and I can almost guarantee you they'll hit it if you get in front of them. So I'm going to tie this on the Timco 7999. Hope that's the right number. Yes, that is correct. TMC 7999 on a size 4, which is my favorite size. It's, you know, not too big, not too small, hey, but it's a good John, bite.
Oh, never mind.
Okay. Shoot. And then the thread I'm going to use, I like the Uni 6/0 in black. It's got enough strength, but not a lot of bulk. The tail is red strung hackle. The butt is this fluorescent green. That's where the fly gets its name. Medium chenille. The tinsel is medium oval silver tinsel, and the body black medium chenille. The beard on this, I like to use these whiting hackles in the bugger pack. I love these bugger packs. If I've got this available for a all-around hackle, I love this because of the varying sizes and the different qualities that you get in that package. And then the wing is the white calf tail. So let's get started. Alright, so let's get started tying this classic steelhead fly known as the greenbutt skunk. Again, I'm going to use the Timco TMC 7999 loop eye salmon hook to tie this on in a size 4. I'm going to start my thread about 1 hook eye length back from the eye of the hook, and just kind of lay a base of thread on there right back to, you can see the arch in this hook shank, and it really starts to change right about the point of the hook. And on most salmon flies and steelhead flies, that is the point that you tie to. I'm going to right here build a very slight bump, very slight. I don't want it terribly big, but I want enough that I want my tail to kick up just a little bit. And again, that is strung neck hackle in red. I'm just going to pull a little over 1/4 of an inch of that off of the quill there. Keep it even. Now you want the length of this to be just a touch beyond the back of the bend of the hook. So I'll measure that, transfer it, and then drop that wrap of thread right in front of that bump. That's a little bit long, so I'm going to shove it forward. There we go. And then bind that down really good. Now the butt of this is going to be, again, medium fluorescent green or chartreuse chenille. To get it on there, I'm going to start by stripping a little bit of the chenille off of the core. Don't need a whole bunch, 1/8 of an inch or so. And then I'm going to bind it to my side of the hook right where I stripped the fluff off of the chenille, and then wrap it forward. I want to cover that up And now we're going to make 2 full wraps. 1, 2. It's not much, it's just a butt. And then I'm going to catch it right up on top of the hook so that I've got 2 full wraps. I've got 2 thread wraps over that and a couple in front, and now I'm going to cut that a little bit long. The reason I'm going to do that is because I don't want any excess bulk, so I'm going to use my thumbnail and again strip that core. That way I don't have extra bulk in there. Get a few wraps to wrap that down, and there we go. Now I'm going to bring my thread back to the back edge of the loop in the eye, and that's where I'm going to tie in my oval chenille. Now this is wrapped with metal, so I like to use my tungsten scissors to cut this as opposed to just the standard steel. And I'm going to tie that in right there, and that kind of just makes up for some of the drop that you get in the shank. And bind that all the way back on my side of the hook right to the green butt. Drop back forward a little bit. Now I'm going to use my black medium chenille, and this is just a standard chenille, and treat it the same way. Strip the core a little bit, and then get my thread to cooperate. I'm going to untwist it a little bit by spinning it counterclockwise. That'll flatten it out and it'll behave a little better. And tie that in right at the intersection of the green. Now I'm going to come back up and I'm going to build a little bit of bulk in there, not a whole lot, just to kind of even up the diameter of the shank all the way up. And then drop that just behind my starting point. Now I'm just going to wrap my chenille around there, and I want it nice and thick, so I'm going to stroke it back as I wrap. And I'm wrapping that pretty tight also. You want it to hold itself in place once you tie it off. And that's nice and bulky. Come up here to the top, and then go ahead and tie it off. Now in this case I'm going to cut that just a hair long, but I am not going to strip the core because I kind of want a little bit of that extra bulk right there on top, because we're in the loop of the eye and I want to make sure that I've bound that down securely. Now I like to go here and groom that, make sure everything's exactly where it is, where I want it, because I want a nice sharp line between the green and the black. I don't want to bind a whole bunch of black over that green butt, because then I'm hiding the hot spot on this thing. I like to put it in my hackle pliers so that I can get really good control, and then just make 4 or 5 wraps, nice and even, all the way up to where it ends right up on top at my tie-in point. There we go. Again, I'm using tungsten scissors so I don't dull my regular steel scissors, because that's metal wrapped around that tinsel. Now for the beard, I've got one of these patches out of my bugger pack, and practically any of these will work as long as the barbs are long enough to reach from this point to the point of the hook. You want to kind of fill in that little gap with the beard on this fly. So I'm just going to kind of stroke that back, look at it, that's a little bit short. I'll go back up in here a little further. Now that one's got plenty of length. Go ahead and look that off of there. Now I want to just kind of stroke that back a little bit and see, that's about the point where I'm going to be where I need to be. And I want 4 to 5 wraps, so I'm going to come back here to where it's shorter. And this is one of the reasons you want to use a neck hackle, because it allows you to wrap that in there, get a short portion under the beard, and then get the length that you're looking for towards the end. I stroke that back, and that kind of preps it. Now I'm going to put this once more into my hackle pliers right here, and now I'm going to stroke downward and back on these fibers. I've got the back end of this held between my little finger, and it's just kind of train those hackles barbs a little bit, and this one doesn't seem to want to cooperate as well as I would like, but we're getting there. What this does, it just makes it a little bit easier to wrap. Well, that's kind of cooperating. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to take this, wrap it in right there where I started stroking the fibers backwards, and go back up over right where I tied off my tinsel. Clip this off. Now, just going to make a few wraps right there. Keep those fibers going back as I work my way forward, wrapping the stem one wrap right in front of the other. And you'll see as we start to come around and that gets longer, able to gauge how long that is. This is not terribly critical that it's exactly that length, but I kind of like to do that because I've found if you're going over some weeds or moss, this actually kind of acts as a hook guard. Keeps you from getting hung up, but it's not stiff enough that it will keep a fish from getting hooked. Once I've got that, I'm just gonna kind of catch that with my thread, give it a couple wraps in front, one more over the stem, and then clip right down in there. And if I take a couple off the top, that's no big deal, because we're going to make a beard out of this rather than it being a round hackle collar. I want it down underneath, and what that does is it kind of helps to keel the fly, because it gives it a profile like this as opposed to being round, and it actually lets it drift sideways in the current, which is how you want to fish this fly, kind of almost on a dead drift or a swing. So this is pretty bulky, so I'm going to come right up here on top and clip that. And then we want to stroke these down, and I've found that the best way to get this is turn your vise upside down, grab those fibers, pull them straight up, and then just make a few wraps. And you can see that's made us a nice tight little beard. Flip that back over, and I'm going to trim all this excess off here, and then bind it all down. Now I'm coming right up into the curve of the hook with my thread, and you see there's a little dip right there. I'm going to fill that in, because once we tie our wing in, that's going to create a problem if we don't fill that in. I want a nice flat taper right here. Alright, now go ahead and bring your thread right back in front of the beard and let it drop. Now there are two ways to tie this wing in, which is calf tail. And I'm going to show you my preferred way. Is just get a nice little clump off of the tail, and it needs to be about the length of the entire hook, from here all the way back, which this tail is just that length. I'm going to stroke out the smaller, shorter fibers. And this has got kind of a fading tip to the wing. As you can see, it's not blunt. We're not going to stack it or anything like that. We're just going to keep it natural. Now I've clipped the butts off, and that's going to be, I know because I've been using this tail a lot on these, the exact length that I'm looking for. Now I'm going to put that butt down in there, make one loose wrap over the top, and you see where it pulled that butt down onto the hook. And then kind of pinching that and holding it up, I'm just going to bind that down. And you can see as I'm working my thread forward, if I had left that little dip in here where it came off the edge of the hackle, my thread would want to jump off the butts. But since we filled that in and gave it a smooth taper, it stays exactly where I want it. Now I'm going to bind right back to that line where the beard is tied in. Nice and tight. I'm putting just about as much pressure as I possibly can on that thread without it snapping. And now I've made a nice smooth taper there. I'm just going to get, you don't need much of a whip finish because we're going to coat this. Now back in the old days, what you'd have to do is put several coats of lacquer to build up a head. But ta-da! We have the magic Solarez. We're going to put just a drop of that on there, if I can find my bodkin. And this is going to do what, in one step, what used to take 5 or 6 coats of lacquer. We're just going to lightly coat it. And because there's so much thread up there, if you don't do this, once you catch a few fish, their teeth are just going to chew right through that thread, and your wing's going to fall off first, and then your beard's going to come unraveled. And I've got one little snippet of hackle butt that I didn't get that's going to show through this head. But that's okay. I don't think the fish are going to look at that and say, "Oh, you didn't trim it right. I'm not going to hit it." Alright, we got that on there. We put a little light to it, get it cured, and you can see the shape of that beard as I'm rotating this. It's all right underneath with just very little flare to the side, and that's what gives it that flat profile. When you let this drift into the current, it's going to turn and go with the current. And that shows that profile to the fish as it passes by. And there you have the classic salmon fly, the green butt skunk.